All right, good morning. This is Dennis Misigoy, Libertarian for the U.S. Senate here in Florida. A little bit late this morning from what I had my little scheduled time here, but all the same, welcome. Glad to talk to you guys on this week of the primary. I guess not really too much changes in the dynamics. It just stuff becomes official. So, so we can talk a little bit about that. But at the end of the day, we're still drawing the same. We're going to be drawing the same contrasts here. So, but we can say, to be very nice, congratulations to Congresswoman Demings for winning her primary resoundingly for the Democratic nomination. The tagline she's using right now is "Meet the Chief," and I think I speak for myself and some of the other candidates for this office when I say I would absolutely love to meet the chief, particularly in a debate candidate forum type of setting where we can really show to people the differences, and we'll put out something to do with that in the near future. We got some more discussions to have and some planning to do, but it's something we'd like to obviously have happen. We'll see how interested they are. They talk a lot. She talks a lot about it, and Democrats in general talk a lot about democracy. So, and I think democracy would obviously be if you have multiple choices. You have quite a few people on the ballot, and we do. We're going to have 5 names on the ballot, including Congresswoman Demings and Senator Rubio. So, why shouldn't we have an open forum that includes as many of us as possible? So, seems like a no-brainer to me. And we'll see if we can make that happen, obviously. So, but let's talk about other things going on, or at least some of the other issues. If we don't have kind of questions coming up, Rubio was actually kind of swinging around the area. There's a nice clip somebody actually shared and commenting on, and I don't know that there's necessarily a whole lot of context that's going to help on this because what I saw was like a really short clip, but something where, of course, decrying the quote-unquote wokeness in the military and talking about pronouns, he then turns that statement around to say they should be focused on blowing up Chinese aircraft carriers, which seems a little bit inflammatory and maybe ill-advised. One of the big critiques I've had, not even necessarily from the non-interventionist standpoint of really we shouldn't be starting wars with anybody, we shouldn't be picking fights with anybody, we shouldn't be instigating conflicts or escalating conflicts. One of the things has been, even if you're not taking that standpoint on it, even just from a pure, self-interested geopolitical kind of viewpoint, it really doesn't make any sense to be pushing buttons and escalating conflicts simultaneously with both China and Russia at the same time. I know that's a little redundant to say with simultaneously, but you know what I mean. It bears adding it bears adding emphasis because it is such a terrible idea. The next 2 biggest nuclear powers, the next biggest economy, and what in the case of one, the next largest nuclear arsenal in the case of the other. So it makes absolutely no sense, but this is what the foreign policy establishment we have likes to do, and Marco Rubio certainly represents that foreign policy establishment, though I don't want to leave Congresswoman Demings out too far behind because even if she may not be the vocal, quite as vocal, let's say, in those regards, she is still someone who votes for every single NDAA, votes for all of this stuff, and will every now and again be parroting the rhetoric, the talking points from leadership. It's worth noting, even though she didn't make the trip out to Taiwan, but she does vote in near lockstep or in complete lockstep in the case of last congressional session, literally in lockstep with Nancy Pelosi, who of course made her famed trip to Taiwan very recently to do no one really knows quite what. But again, this goes to just sort of the general issues here and some of the stuff that we have issues with, obviously, which is why we don't find either of those two to be acceptable options for the Senate seat. So, team elected officials say we should not bomb other countries. Yes. We really, it's the kind of rhetoric, but not just the rhetoric, but the rhetoric and the voting record that epitomizes really the worst of our foreign policy establishment. The kind of open desire to make war and to get involved versus a desire for peace, which benefits not just the other nations, but also benefits us. We need to let go of the poisonous dream of U.S. global hegemony, this fixation on developing a unipolar world. We really need to have learned from particularly the last 20 years and what happened in the last year relative to that. I'm talking about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, of course. Because when people, and this goes beyond the simple topics of foreign policy, but it gets into just the understanding of the limits on government power and what it actually can do and what it can change. And in the foreign policy realm, when we think, well, this country's doing this, we can't allow that to happen. This whole sort of mentality that the government can't allow certain things to happen. There needs to be a recognition that our government cannot control a lot of things from happening. Again, I bring up the example of Afghanistan because, the biggest, most powerful military in the world, all the resources you can imagine, the most advanced everything, and we spent 20 years, trillions of dollars, probably killed 1 million people, took some losses of our own, along with everybody who came back with PTSD, and the suicide epidemic among veterans and active duty military, and all of that combined, and we made all of these sacrifices. And again, I know I've said this to a lot of people, and I've probably said this on here a bunch of times, but we left, and a week later the Taliban had control of the entire country. You can't, there's no, I don't know that you can come up with an example that better reflects the impotency of all those efforts when you say that, look, if the Taliban were actually trying to attack the U.S. and they were actually trying to fight us, maybe it would have made sense. They never were. Somewhere along the lines, very early on, there seemed to have been some loss of focus between going after Al-Qaeda and then going after the Taliban. And not that I want to necessarily suggest that was done in good faith. I think that, but again, such is the nature of our foreign policy establishment and the reality of what we have, and the question just is, do we want to continue on down the same path? Because we will continue on down the same path if Marco Rubio or Val Demings are elected as U.S. Senator, because they're going to vote that way, and they have voted that way. They both have clearly established voting records, one in the House, one in the Senate. So there's no real question about this. So question for us is just, what are we going to do as voters in the state of Florida? And if you are interested in supporting, even if you're outside of the state, you can still support the efforts, making a contribution, obviously spreading the word any ways that you can. And obviously that's stuff we need. We are nowhere close to the resources these guys have. And again, it can't be said enough. I'll pivot away from policy and kind of this stuff because actually I'm trying to remember, man, even before getting into the stuff about the primary and everything, I did want to give a shout out to a couple things. I was in Pensacola this last weekend, so shout out to the guys from LP, really all over the Panhandle, because there was some guys from Escambia was the local affiliate we were with there, but my buddy Patrick from Bay County was over there, and I'm trying to think other people that might have been from a little bit further out. I'm not quite sure. Everybody, Anthony Welch, he's always been a big supporter, came down, was part of the events there. So everybody, thank you to everybody who was a part of that and helped bring me out there. We talked to a ton of people over at Gallery Night last week on Friday. It was great being able to spread that message, people kind of hearing. Some people a little confused, I already voted. Well, that's the August primary. I had to tell them, this is for November. Give them the cards, man. We gave out all of our cards, so it was great. Great time reaching out to people and trying to let them know. So good cause for hope. It's just a matter, again, I can't be everywhere. We can't reach everyone in that sort of way. So it's important for us to bring people and to share content like this, as well as to, again, just spread the word. We got the signs on the website, and we got to do a little bit more with that. But everything that's possible. We got to go to Evolution, man. I keep thinking to get out there and I keep putting it off. We got to figure out a time. We got to come up with something. So, because you guys are not that far out, so I need to get out there as well. But there's a lot of places I need to get to, and we're trying to work on a few different things. So, and the time is starting to come up on us. So we're gonna make it happen. Let's see. And I do want to congratulate. I know we didn't get the results we wanted, but but several friends of mine who were competing in the August election, Marta Bueno down in Miami-Dade, Mercedes Morassi down in Broward, Stephen Nikela down in Key West. We didn't get the results we wanted, but all fought very well. Mercedes even getting, I believe, 41% in her race. So, we're knocking on the door. We're knocking on the door down there, and making a lot of headlines in the case of Marta. So, we're just going to keep at it and keep on building up the liberty movement here in Florida. And certainly, I hope we can kind of build on that. Obviously, there's a decent number of people in my race, and so I'd like to make quite a bit of noise as well. But it's all a question of how much can people hear the message. Again, we don't need the same resources that these guys do, because for Rubio and Demings, it's flooding you with messages, flooding you with whether it's ads online, on TV, on direct mailers, this, that, and the other thing. They're just going to flood you with it, try to overwhelm you. All we need to do is to reach you. All we need to do to voters is to reach them, to get this message, because the message we have is more powerful than any attack ad. It's more powerful than all of the vapid sort of talking points that you get from mainstream politicians about nothing. Matter of fact, I was having a little bit of fun because, in particular, I'll again give you the example, and I'm beating some of the dead horses here again. Val Demings making a post, or I shouldn't say her making a post. It's her social media team. Let's be honest here. But saying, I guess because there was some article, Marco Rubio saying his campaign's a little bit of a mess. Doesn't look quite that messy to me, but, my perspective is obviously a little different. But something to the effect of, this is the one time I agree with Marco Rubio, which is hilarious because when it comes to funding the military-industrial complex and voting for every NDAA, they absolutely agree all the time. They've agreed all throughout their careers, while they've been at the same, both serving in D.C., up through the most recent years, $762 billion for this fiscal year. We're looking at $840 plus billion for the next fiscal year, and they're both going to vote for it. So the idea that they don't agree on anything is a joke. And I'll be highlighting a little bit more of those sort of things in the coming weeks, to be sure, because I think people need to know that they have an option on the ballot that isn't going to be, hey, how much more money can I give to local police? How much more money can I give? Much more federal taxpayer money can I give to the Pentagon? How much more of this can we do? Because for both of them, it is the same, and for me, it is very, very different. And I want people to understand that that is the differences we need. One wants to, ban assault weapons or high-capacity magazines, and the other one wants red flag laws. And me, I just want a Second Amendment. I'd like to see a nationwide constitutional carry because the Constitution is nationwide. It's the U.S. Constitution, the Second Amendment, and the Bill of Rights that guarantees that right for everybody. We shouldn't need to be doing that state by state. That should be recognized across this country, that you have the right to keep and bear arms. But Marco would rather make sure that government has a way to come and seize that from you. So, that's the difference. And we see it here in Florida with the establishment Republicans and what they do here and what their priorities are. And you see it from us, the difference in terms of what we're talking about. So, but it only makes a difference if we're there to do it and there to hold one of these spots and to take away this power from the guys who want to subvert your rights. So we'll be highlighting a bit more of that. And, along the same lines, yeah, the Fifth and Sixth Amendments as well. Certainly due process, right to be secured, life, liberty, and property in that regard. So another good example. Similarly, I saw Rubio putting out a new ad as well. And a couple things he was bragging out just seems so strange. You think about what Republicans try to sell you as about being small government, and instead, and certainly, not that it's not that I'm one to necessarily try to always go with the decentralized government approach of saying, I really like state governments or city or localities and whatever, municipalities, excuse me. But, he's got an ad, and one of the things he's bragging about, they have little news clips in there, is, injecting, the federal government into like local housing disputes, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And then, of course, another one, the big feather in his cap, was bragging about PPP. the paycheck protection, the loans. I'm going to put in quotes because so much of these loans are being forgiven, which is another, has been a big talking point to, decentralize down to the individual is the only thing that matters. But the PPP program, which such a smashing success, where so much of this, again, is being forgiven, as they say. And this has become a talking point in the whole student loan, student debt forgiveness discussion, is the fact that they're doing this for the PPP loans, which were done, obviously, as a part of the COVID response. And again, it's one of these things where it's so deceptive. In order to get this stuff passed, in order to sell the American people that this is what we're going to do, and they're going to sell it as loans, that they're going to loan money to these businesses so that they can do this, that, or the other thing, and to try to get over the hump of people looking at this and recognizing it as corporate welfare, as taking money out of the pockets of the poor middle class and giving it to businesses. And again, there's businesses of various sizes, so I don't want to be overly paint with too broad a brush. But again, it's a program where, rather than, what I think a lot of people might have at least been more tolerant of, the idea of giving direct relief to individual citizens, instead we're giving the money to businesses and trusting them to do the right thing. And obviously a lot of those were misused. A lot of it is being forgiven, and so it ends up not really being loans in that case. It ends up just being subsidies. And look, if you want to make the argument that that's what you want to do, let's at least be upfront and make the argument, hey, we're going to give these companies this money to keep them afloat. It's a bailout. At least be honest about it. At least be honest about what we're doing, but they don't want to be honest about it. They want to present it one way when the reality is something else, and that's nothing new. Certainly that's the case with China in terms of a threat level to the U.S., but that doesn't stop Marco Rubio from talking about wanting to blow up Chinese aircraft carriers. It's a wild statement. So, but it's indicative of the foreign policy establishment and indicative of what he's trying to appeal to, I suppose. And not that there's anyone I don't want to appeal to, but I want people to recognize that, this does not make sense. This is bad policy. It is dangerous for us, and it has an impact on us. Even if we never fire a rocket at these countries, the misallocation of resources into the military-industrial complex has an impact on the economy, on the rest of us, and it's not something we can overlook and just kind of gloss over and say, well, it's just the way it is, and we're just going to accept it. We can't do that, so let's not do that. Let's instead look critically, think critically about this stuff, and recognize the need to rein it in. And again, the fact that it's not going to get reined in by the usual suspect. It's not going to be reined in by Val Demings. It's not going to be reined in by Marco Rubio. Who's going to do it? I'd say I'll do it, and I'll certainly do my best, but I'm only going to ever be one seat. So it's going to take more than just me. But can we do it? Absolutely. But we got to start somewhere, and now's the time. As I say, now is the time, and we cannot afford to wait any longer. Thank you, Joe. We're it's not just one seat that we're competing for here in Florida. We got Joe here running for U.S. House. What's the district number? So I get it, but he's based out of Volusia. He's going to tell me the district number in a sec. Yeah, we know a guy. We got in the comments. What's the district, Joe? So, just so we know, but we got Joe Hanush here, District 6. We got Frank Kraft out in the Tampa-St. Pete area as well. So we've got a couple other options here. If you happen to be in those areas, make sure that you're looking at those guys for your general election coming up in November as the right candidates who are also going to fight for this stuff, who are going to fight for not continuing the endless warfare state, not making our country poorer to enrich the narrow set of special interests like the military-industrial complex or other connected special interests, because you have things like the CHIPS Act, and I saw Val Demings bragging about some other farming act, which of course the money's going to go to the people that are the most connected Joe's helped me out here. We got Daytona, Palm Coast, and Mount Dora areas. So that's where his district covers. If you're in one of those areas, check him out. He's got the links on. He's got the links in the comments if you're on the Facebook feed here. And let me see. But bringing me back, and again, it's funny because I see these posts from the social media team for Val Demings and bragging about again another subsidy bill, and again, it's taking money from the regular people in this country and giving it to the special interest, and it's always this dynamic, and people really need to understand and appreciate this. The federal government has nothing. Government in general has nothing but what it takes from you. Okay, so whatever it taxes from you, they're going to take that money, take a cut, move it around. They're going to give it then to some particular group, whatever it may be. Maybe it's the farmers, maybe it's the semiconductor industry, maybe it's some other favorite industry, some particular kind of manufacturing or whatever it may be, and obviously the military-industrial complex. They're going to give that money to them, and then they're going to tell you to thank them for giving your money to somebody else after taking their cut. And they really do it, and it's baffling for a lot of different reasons. Because number one, I mean, they're taking your money and giving it to somewhere else. They want you to thank them for it because it's not their money. They present it like it's their money. They put their name at the top of the check like it's their money, but it's not their money. It's your money. But the other part of that is the fact that not only is it just dishonest and disingenuous, but it's also not good economics. When you redistribute wealth and you redistribute resources like this, you're always going to get it wrong, because the most efficient way to do it is a free market. It is a price-coordinated economy. There's other people who talk about this, a lot more eloquently and in depth than I'm certainly going to do in the next bunch of minutes. But prices convey information. Profits and losses convey information in a way that is intuitively understood. If something costs more in a certain place, well, you might sell more of it in that place. Demand, the way these things are communicated, and knowledge is transferred, because none of us has all the knowledge to decide how to guide an economy, what businesses need these resources, and certainly no group of people, not like the ones in Washington, D.C. or elsewhere, are going to understand that. So with that recognition that nobody has that intelligence, it might seem like a daunting task, but it's not, because freedom works, because these things naturally convey that information, and it leads to the most efficient distribution of resources. And why is that important? An efficient economy delivers goods and services at the lowest cost possible. What does that mean? That means for the amount you're making, you're going to be able to buy more, and you will have more left over at the end afterwards, which means then you can spend it on other things. And maybe you spend it on just buying some luxury item. Maybe you save it up. Maybe you invest it in something that's going to create some other new goods and services, or some other new industry that is going to improve the quality of life for people in general over time. But we never are able to do that if we don't begin to build some kind of efficiency. If we never become more efficient, that never happens. And everything that we do today in terms of this kind of central economic planning stifles that optimization of our economy. And who knows how much further ahead we could be if not for it. But the best we can do is to try to go forward in understanding that. That kind of brings me around to something I forgot to mention also at the beginning. If you guys haven't seen it, I had an article come out on Monday from Reason. It's got it posted on all the social media, I believe. It should be up everywhere, on Twitter, on Facebook, and even posted some screenshots from it on Instagram, so if you want to, go check it out there. But it came out on Monday, and check it out, man. We're talking about why, referring to Marco Rubio as a socialist. And again, some people kind of roll their eyes when I say that, but you got to understand, this is the loose sort of terminology that has been the way that socialism has been loosely used, and not just by Republicans who want to lambaste Democrats. Every Democrat is a socialist, but even by self-professed democratic socialists themselves. You can go find a video on YouTube, go, what is democratic socialism? And they'll be like, public schools and Medicaid and Medicare and this and that. They go ahead and describe all those things as examples of democratic socialism. So certainly we can recognize that someone like Marco Rubio, whose answer for every problem, and certainly for every economic problem, is more economic intervention, it is more central economic planning, government redistributing resources to deal with this, that, and the other problem. Everything from, the economy competing with China or whoever else, to trying to deal with the social ills of the world. It is all about redistributing resources and trying to use government to lift up one group at the expense of others, to incentivize certain kinds of behavior. And here's the thing. Again, you don't need to do that. Behavior that is good, by and large, incentivizes itself. You don't need to try to coax people into doing things that benefit themselves. By and large, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about, I guess, certain aspects of human behavior in that regard, but, and likewise with punishing bad behavior, a lot of this stuff, particularly that we go after in this country, and I'll get into some of the libertarian stuff when you talk about things like drug use and whatever, when you talk about becoming addicts, and obviously that's harmful to the person who's taking the drugs, but again, that already has a natural consequence. So to compound that by throwing someone into prison and now they come out with a criminal record and they can't put their life back together, you're not actually helping people. So again, it's all this idea of the government imposing. In that case, it's through a criminal system, but in other cases we're doing it through economics, through taxation, or through subsidies to try to incentivize or disincentivize certain kinds of behavior. And the truth is we need to allow people to be free. It seems crazy because we all pay lip service to being free. We all pay lip service to, this idea of being free. We all pay lip service to it, but they don't show up for it. Instead, we get what we get, which is a government that, and this whole idea, it reminds me of another comment or something I replied to within the last bunch of days, where it was something along the lines of, should government allow people to, or should government let us harm ourselves, or something like that. And to me, it's a no-brainer, because the whole idea of government will let us is completely wrong, and it puts everything upside down. And it's it goes back to, again, the key difference, I think, between Republicans and Democrats and us libertarians. Republicans and Democrats subscribe to the idea of an all-powerful government, that kind of all-powerful government that it basically, and again, it's like what Mussolini described in when he gave his definition of fascism for like the encyclopedia in Italian back in the 1930s. That it just allows the people enough freedom to do stuff that is good and nothing else. So we have this idea from these guys that the government is all powerful, the nation is the most important thing, and we are just going to allow people to do the things that are good, and that government has legitimate authority to do that, and that's completely wrong. Obviously, the core American values are that we as people are free, and that the power that the government has is only that power which we can vest in it. And we can't vest power in the government that we don't have, such as to violate the rights of our friends and neighbors. So, the idea of, will government let us, or should government let us? Government's not in a position to decide to let us or not let us do this, that, or the other thing. It's us who decides what government can do, or not even decides what government can do, decides what thing that we can do, we are going to allow the government to do on our behalf. And that's very limited, what that can be. That's where you can kind of have the explanation to have like a police force and conflict resolution and certain things like that. Very, very limited functionality. Which is what the government should be. It should not be the government that we have today that has this myriad of departments and agencies that are all exist to make decisions for you guys, to run your lives and find a problem every time you make a little mistake to kind of wring you out. What's the word I'm looking for, man? Hang you out to dry. That's the word. The phrase, excuse me. So we're going to talk a lot more about all these kind of things, but I'm at time, and I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you guys for joining me. Again, if you haven't already, hit up the website, misigoy.com, misigoy.com. If you can contribute what you can. Obviously, again, we need all the resources we can to be able to reach people. If you're here in Florida, while you're there, pick up a sign, man. Pick up a sign, and put that out somewhere so people can see it. We need to start spreading the word, and we need to spread the word every which way we can. So in the physical, in the real world, putting stuff out there, out online, by word of mouth, everything we can do, because we've only got so much time, and we need to break through the walls. We need to break through the noise, so that people understand that it doesn't have to keep going the way that it is. But it only changes if we change. So help me change it. All right. Thank you guys again, and I will talk to you guys next week, if not sooner. Thank you.